everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor and trauma therapist. Today we're going to go over 10 of my top things that anybody who has survived a narcissistic relationship or a very abusive relationship for a long period of time will find quite helpful in their healing journey. For those of us who do have narcissistic abuse dynamics, whether in our families of origin or perhaps in a romantic relationship, there are common things that these individuals do when they are abusing us. And so these are going to be my top 10 things to look out for. These may be brand new to some of you. Some of you may already have some understanding of these particular behaviors, but nonetheless may still find something helpful here. For those of us who've survived this type of abuse, it's really important in having a language to describe what we went through so that we can understand what happened, understand what it looks like, but also it's very helpful in validating our experiences because there's a lot of gaslighting and invalidation that goes on in abusive relationships. Abusers never want to be accountable for their behavior, so there's a lot of blame shifting onto you or anybody else, and you can begin to feel really, really crazy in these relationships. So these top 10 things are going to be very important for you to stop feeling so crazy, hopefully to get a lot of validation that it was never you, you're in an abusive relationship, not that there's anything inherently wrong with you, and also help you spot these type of behaviors in the future so that you can stay safe from any type of relationship that might be harmful in the future. So if you find this helpful, please leave a comment if you want to, or definitely subscribe to my channel. I got lots of other good stuff on healing complex trauma and healing from abusive relationships. And without further ado, let's get started. All right, the first one is baiting. So what do we mean by baiting? So as you see in the image I shared right before this, there's a fish getting ready to bite a hook. So this is very much what baiting is. The abuser will send out some sort of provocative comment or behavior that's going to elicit a negative response from us. So they're doing this on purpose. They know it's going to make you angry. They know it's going to be hurtful. And it's like putting a hook in the water, and they want to see if you can bite at their provocative comment or behavior. They love getting negative reactions from us. That's what fuels a lot of their negative energy. Anybody who is high in narcissistic traits is going to really be problematic for a lot of the negative behaviors they do. They really don't have a lot of empathy, and sometimes they can get a lot of joy out of harming people and causing negative responses from people. It makes them feel powerful, it makes them feel important. And so baiting is one of those behaviors to be on the lookout for. So if anybody happens to obviously put a very obvious provocative and negative comment out there knowing that it's going to bother you, you can be pretty sure you're being baited. So best response is no response. You just act like you didn't hear it. Or what? I don't understand. What do you mean by that? So those are kind of some neutral gray rock responses, because the last thing you want to do is give them the satisfaction of upsetting you. They love that. So if you remain calm and cool and composed, you win, because essentially anybody who's baiting another human being wants a response from you. So don't give them that. That's how you win. The next one is circular conversations. So essentially these are endless arguments that you probably have had repeatedly with the toxic person, and these arguments just go nowhere. You may start out trying to have some sort of accountability or agreement or get somewhere with the abusive person. You're trying to maybe explain your side, and all of a sudden not only will they commonly blame shift back onto you, like this is all your fault, or what about when you did this, or yeah, well I remember when XYZ happened, and yeah, you're not addressing that, and essentially you'll never be able to get anywhere with them. And you could start out as calm and as polite as possible, and they will shift all over the place in terms of changing the topic, bringing up something that happened 5 years ago. All of a sudden they're talking about this over here, and before you know it, you're like, oh my God, what were we even talking about? Ugh. And so the reason they do this is to purposely keep you off balance. Again, they're not going to be accountable. They don't feel they've done anything wrong, and they sure as heck are not going to allow you to hold them accountable. So that's where you see these circular conversations that no matter what you do and how well you communicate, you're going to find the conversation just going around endlessly in all sorts of crazy directions where you don't even know what is up and what is down anymore by the time the conversation is over. And by over, I mean usually you're either in tears or have stormed out, or they've stormed out, or you're just left reeling like, what the heck even happened? Like, it's not like a nice end to the conversation is my point. So my best advice here is don't engage in circular conversations. As soon as you see that it's going to go all over the place with absolutely no real adult dialogue and resolution, you can just stop right there and be like, I see we're not in agreement here, so let's just agree to disagree and end the conversation. It's not really worth it to engage in conversations where you can clearly tell that the other person has no interest whatsoever in meeting you in the middle or having some sort of conversation about what happened. So yeah, don't engage in these. They're crazy making. All right, the next one is gaslighting. This is quite a popular term these days. It's something that you hear quite a bit in the literature around narcissistic abuse because it happens a lot. So there was originally a famous movie out many years ago, maybe in the 50s or 60s. I don't exactly remember when, but it was called Gaslight. And the whole idea was that the husband was attempting to make his wife feel like she was going crazy because he was changing the lighting in the house, I believe the gaslight lamps, changing them and turning them down over a period of time. And then she would come to him and go, something's going on with the lighting. Why is the lighting getting darker? And he'd be like, what are you talking about? There's nothing going on. You're going crazy. So that's the whole idea here. Gaslighting is a way to undermine somebody's reality, where the abuser knows what the reality is, but they don't care. They want you to feel crazy. They want to disempower you. They want to undermine your own sense of reality in terms of your thoughts, your emotions, and beliefs that are true for you. It's a way to have power over somebody, right? Because if you essentially are able to get somebody to believe that they're going crazy and that they're wrong, you get to maintain power in the relationship. So gaslighting is an extremely destructive form of abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, that many abusers and narcissistic individuals do. They will absolutely attempt to undermine your own thoughts and feelings and reality and essentially implement theirs. Theirs is the status quo. Their feelings, thoughts, and beliefs are reality, and yours are not. You're the crazy one. So this is a very common behavior that we see in abusive relationships as well. A good way to counteract gaslighting, if you see that somebody is doing this to you, is simply to state, no, we remember things differently, or that's not how I remember it, or, well, you're entitled to your beliefs, or, you're entitled to your way of thinking, but I believe differently, so just kind of stand your ground. Doesn't mean you have to argue with a person, but you can simply say, yeah, no, we're going to agree to disagree here. So that's perfectly fine. None of us have to be in 100% agreement with anyone else to be valid and to have a valid point or feeling. So yeah, don't let anybody undermine your own sense of reality, and your own thoughts and feelings and whatnot. You're entitled to have them, even when they're different. All right, the next one is FOG. FOG stands for fear, obligation, and guilt. So these are things that every single person who's very manipulative, highly disordered, abusive, they share this in common of attempting to manipulate and control individuals through tactics that involve instilling fear in their victims, making their victims feel obligated, making their victims feel guilty. So you'll know when you're being fogged. For example, when somebody's guilt tripping you or manipulating you, attempting to make you feel bad for something. And oftentimes they want something, and maybe, for example, you're just not on board, you can't do it, or you're not available, or something like that. And now here comes the guilt and the manipulation to make you feel bad for not being available to them. So that's just one example, or fear, instilling fear in you. Well, if you don't help me with XYZ, I'm not going to be able to, help you with your cell phone bill then, or something like that. And again, it's a pattern. This is not just a once in a while thing. This is like a repeated pattern of instilling fear, obligation, or guilt. So any threatening statements, threatening you or your safety, constant guilt tripping, etc. This is very much what we call fog. And people who do this frequently, again, it's about maintaining power over somebody else. You don't abusers don't want any of us to feel empowered, because if we do, we're going to leave the relationship, right? And they fundamentally need to have power over people and use people. That's just kind of what they do. They're not able to really have a genuine connection with another human being and feel a real sense of satisfaction and joy in just connecting with other human beings. That's not how they operate. So this is fog is definitely in their repertoire. It happens frequently. It's crazy making, and it definitely makes you feel bad on a regular basis. So therefore, you're obligated to constantly keep them happy. So yeah, this is another one to look out for. The next one is JADE. So I remember when I first learned about this years ago when I was in the forums for survivors of narcissistic abuse, and boy, was it an eye-opener for me. It is something I was so guilty of doing. I had a lot of people-pleasing parts from growing up in my own dysfunctional family, where I just never felt truly loved for who I authentically was. So I would twist myself into 50,000 pretzel knots, so to speak, to try to make people happy. And a lot of that was in the way I would explain myself. And I would over-explain myself. In fact, it was almost like I felt if I gave more information and explained myself in this very long-winded way, that the person would maybe not be mad at me and would not abuse me or traumatize me in some way. So JADE is really helpful for those of us who do this kind of over-explaining as a trauma response. Essentially, it stands for don't justify your maybe your opinion or your thoughts or feelings. You're not justifying it. You're allowed to have your own thoughts and feelings and perceptions and be different. You don't have to justify them. Do not argue, right? So again, those circular conversations, if you sense a circular conversation is happening, you don't want to argue. You don't want to justify yourself. You don't want to defend yourself. And you don't want to explain yourself. So that's JADE. Because what ends up happening is you end up kind of feeling backed into a corner, and you're beginning to justify and attempting to explain and defending yourself. And the abuser's loving this. They're just like, nailing you to the wall, so to speak, and talking you into circles and making you feel worse and worse about yourself, throwing a little fear, obligation, and guilt in. And before you know it, you've completely cowed to their, whatever their needs are. And like, I'm so sorry, you're right. Oh, and they have complete control. So the idea is don't do that. So you stand your ground. So again, some simple ways of standing your ground might be, again, we remember things differently, or nope, that doesn't work for me, or I'm going to need you to stop talking to me like that. If you continue, we're just going to have to end our relationship or end this conversation. And again, very short. So I learned very early on, the shorter you are in your responses to abusers and people who are highly disordered, the better. You don't want to give long-winded explanations. You want to be short and straight to the point. Oftentimes a boundary is needed, but just short, sweet, to the point, and then you stick to it. Another technique that I didn't add here, but was very helpful along this line, is called the broken record technique. I teach this to a lot of my clients. The broken record technique is simply, you state the boundary. So maybe it's, please do not speak to me like that. I find it disrespectful. If you continue, I'm going to hang up the phone. And then say the person just, they're continuing to do whatever it is that's inappropriate. And you simply go, if you continue to speak to me like this, I'm going to hang up the phone. And maybe you say it one more time. And then you literally hang up the phone. So in other words, you don't get into justifying yourself and attempting to explain and defending against something else they said you did 10 years ago. And no, that's circular conversations. You just stick straight to the point, and then you end the conversation if it doesn't go anywhere. So hopefully that's helpful too. All right, this is another one I found tremendously helpful in my healing journey, was the 3 C's. So this is super helpful because a lot of us growing up in dysfunctional families constantly feel like we're not good enough, we're the problem. Again, lots of scapegoating, lots of psychological and emotional abuse where you don't even know who the heck you are anymore, and who you authentically are has been rejected by your family. You're constantly being told that you're not good enough in some way, shape, or form. And so oftentimes, by the time you hit a therapist's office, your self-worth is so far in the dumps that it takes quite a while to unravel it. So the 3 C's is really helpful here in putting in perspective what has actually gone on and separating your responsibility from what the abuser's responsibility is. And a lot of times, none of our abuse, especially when we were children, for goodness sake, but even abuse as an adult, is not our fault. The abuser is always 100% responsible for their abuse. We are only responsible for how we respond to abuse, especially as adults. Children have no fault here whatsoever. So the 3 C's here are very important. You did not cause the abuse, right? You were a child. You didn't cause the abuse to happen. You cannot cure the illness. So whatever the abuser has, whether it's mental illness or alcoholism or just plain old narcissistic personality disorder, you did not cause that to happen to this person. It is not your fault. And therefore, you also cannot control how this person behaves towards you. They're responsible for their behavior. You are responsible for yours. So you didn't cause it, you cannot cure it, and you cannot control it. So what is left here is this deep knowledge of, this is not my problem. And the only thing I can do is protect myself. And usually what that means for survivors of abuse is getting out of the relationship, maintaining no contact, and remaining safe, because that is all you realistically can do. The rest is out of your hands. So this is very important, again, for people who struggle with people pleasing, who struggle with taking too much responsibility in the relationship, who try to fix others too much. No. You didn't cause it. You can't cure it. You can't control it. The only thing you can do now is keep yourself safe and stay away from abuse. Hope that helps. All right, this is quite similar to what we just discussed with the 3 C's. This is my stuff and their stuff. So again, this is very helpful for a lot of us who had a hard time understanding that we were not at fault for what happened to us, right? So I cannot tell you, not only myself, but how many survivors sit in front of me blaming themselves for what happened in their family of origin. You are not at fault for the abuse and the systemic trauma patterns in the family that continue abusive behaviors and patterns in the family. You are not at fault for this. So the my stuff, their stuff is a great way, as we're starting to understand and really get what happened to us and the patterns in the family. Oftentimes it's helpful for clients sometimes to have even a list where they write out, this is like my stuff. So this is what I'm responsible for. Like, I'm responsible for my own thoughts. I'm responsible for my feelings. I'm responsible for my perceptions. I'm responsible for my behaviors, right? And my responses to any maybe potentially abusive behaviors. That's what I'm responsible for. And then this is what the abuser's responsible for, right? Because they're also responsible for their own behaviors and their own thoughts and feelings and their own perceptions and their own responses and behaviors, right? So if they're abusing us, they're responsible for that abuse. You are not. You're only responsible for how you respond, for example. So say your abuser insults you and you slug them in the face. Now, some of us might be like, they had it coming. But, right, you are responsible for slugging him in the face. You could have disengaged, you could have walked away, you could have left the room, for example. So in that case, you would be responsible for slugging them in the face. But you're not responsible for whatever they initially said to you that caused you to be angry. And that brings up a whole other good topic of triggers and all of that. And that's why trauma therapy is so helpful too, because there's a lot of lightning hot, like immediate triggers that a lot of trauma survivors have as well. And although we were not responsible for the abuse we went through as a child, we are definitely responsible for healing as an adult. Yes, it's definitely, there's an aspect of unfairness to this, but we are responsible for our own healing. After all, the abuser certainly is not going to do it for us, right? So yeah, my stuff, their stuff, that can be really helpful too in understanding and empowering us to understand we do have more power than we thought as well. We do have power to heal. We do have power to maintain boundaries. We do have power to walk away. We are not helpless. So this is also helpful for that too. All right, so this is one of my favorite techniques. If you are going to have to be around an abuser, maybe for a holiday or birthday or something, and you know that abuser is going to try to piss you off in some way, shape, or form. This is called the observe, don't absorb technique. So essentially what I tell my clients is you're going to maintain your own emotional equilibrium by remaining calm and detached, right? Detachment here. So pretend, for example, you're at a holiday gathering and the narcissist is over there doing what the narcissist does and being rude and getting everybody's goat up. You're just going to pretend that you are a scientist in the middle of a jungle and you're observing the wild monkey troop in the room, right? So you can imagine a scientist has their notepad and they're like, a monkey is now hitting other monkey over the head with banana, And in other words, there's no emotional interaction here. You're very detached, you're very clinical, you're very professional in your observations, and it's a way for you to feel a sense of emotional safety and detachment from what is happening. So again, narcissists very much can easily trigger those of us who've been abused for God knows how long by them. This is a way of getting emotional distance from them so they can't harm us so easily anymore. For those of us who have to have some contact with them, the observe, don't absorb technique is really helpful. So yeah, maintain that emotional distance. Don't react. You're a scientist observing the crazy monkeys within the room, for example, and hopefully that helps you maintain some of that emotional safety that we need when we still have to have some interaction with the abusers. All right, the next is gray rock. So gray rock is something quite a few of us probably have heard of. The idea here is that, again, narcissists and highly disordered individuals love to get reactions out of us, right? They are quite negative, mean, nasty people. And they really thrive on saying mean, negative, nasty things and having nasty, mean behaviors to try to get reactions out of people. That's what we call narcissistic supply. So basically it's like their cocaine here of, oh, thank God I got so-and-so and so-and-so to really upset today. Like, whoo, I feel great. Yeah, we're not going to give them that satisfaction of knowing that they've upset us because they love it. They love it. They live for upsetting people. That really fills them with supply. So you don't want to give them narcissistic supply. So what you're going to do is you're going to do gray rock. And so what I instruct my clients is, again, imagine a gray rock on the ground, right? It sits there, it's gray, it's nondescript, it's quite boring, and it has absolutely no reaction to whatever goes on around it, right? If it's a lightning storm, still sits there like a gray rock. Rain still sits there. Hot sunny day still sits there, right? So that's the idea, that you are just maintaining this very neutral, non-responsive, non-reactive behavior when you're around the narcissist. So when they try to bait you or any other circular conversation, insult, derogatory comment, doesn't matter. Whatever they do, you just kind of, that's nice. I'm going to go get a drink out of the fridge now. No emotional response, right? So you're not doing any emotional response to any of their baiting behaviors because we don't want to give them what they want, which is supply. Hopefully this one helps. And last, but certainly not least, is the 51% rule. So this was helpful for me as well as an individual healing from this type of abuse. Again, took way too much responsibility for other people's negative behaviors, people pleasing. That wounded part was heavily present, twisting myself into tons of different pretzel knots to try to please people. So the 51% rule is helpful when we have this particular trauma wound. And essentially what that says is you are responsible for at least 51%, just a little bit more of your own well-being than you are for anyone else's. So this gives us permission to take care of ourselves just a little bit more than we would anyone else in our life. And especially when it comes to abusers and narcissists, right? So give yourself permission to take care of your own emotional needs, your sense of safety, your physical needs, psychological needs. You're allowed to take care of your own needs first and at a slightly higher importance level than anyone else in your life. Definitely including the narcissist. So this is when we get into therapy, we start taking care of our own needs first. For the very first time, it feels very odd and weird to those of us who've had this type of abuse, but it's a very important part of our healing and learning to love ourselves and care for ourselves and put ourselves and our own needs slightly, just at least slightly above anyone else. Because after all, no one else is going to take care of our needs but us. So it is up to us to learn how to do this. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, again, please leave a like, subscribe. I have lots of content similar in nature. Feel free to make any comments below or suggestions if you'd like me to make any movies on anything else. You know, any of your feedback is helpful for me to know what you guys are finding helpful and to make videos on. And as always, I so appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.